The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Is the president really prepared to shut down the government again in 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think he actually is.
17 congressional leaders, 8 Republicans and 9 Democrats have less than 3 weeks to fulfill a vague mission: beef up border security funding by an unspecified amount.
We really have no choice but to build a powerful wall.
The president said Friday that if Congress doesn't boost funding, he'll declare a national emergency or allow another partial shutdown, even though many in his party still feel burned by the last one.
Shutdowns are never good policy, ever.
According to S&P, the shutdown has cost the U.S. economy $6 billion. That's more than the $5.7 billion President Trump requested for the border wall at the heart of this dispute. A federal watchdog determined it could take the IRS at least a year to get back to normal after 5 million pieces of mail went unopened.
It's going to be massive catch-up at this point.
Michelle Harris is one of thousands of IRS workers who were furloughed for 35 days. She put off emergency dental work and car repairs and still hasn't gotten her back pay. She says some of her colleagues quit.
I know that it was more than people could handle, and they put in their notice. I don't blame them.
The White House says that federal workers will start to get their back pay today and that all overdue checks should go out by the end of the week. As for President Trump's State of the Union address, CBS News has learned that February 5th is under consideration as a makeup date, but that, like so much else around here, is currently uncertain.
I had a great birthday. I'm having a great birthday is what it is. I gotta say, my family is amazing. We had, they surprised me. Surprise! You're old. We're older. It was amazing. It was just amazing. I have so many freaking cousins, and Howard arranged a surprise party for me yesterday, which is very difficult to do because I can sniff out news. And I really was surprised, and I thank him very much for doing that. And Loretta's awesome, and my father's family is just incredible, and thank you so much. People flew for me with the TSA, with the whole thing, with the, thank God the government opened for my family. I think that's what did it. But wow, what a day that was for me yesterday. So awesome, so incredible. You might notice I have a little bling. See, yeah, very ghetto. I love this. But yeah, okay, so the government is open today. It's open today. Thank God. Thank God. But they're struggling. There's 5 million pieces of mail not opened at the IRS. I mean, S is in their name, as in service, and they're going to be, paper cuts. It's going to be death by 1,000 cuts for those IRS employees. It's just so unbelievable. It's just such an amazing thing. And, of course, they couldn't wait. Everybody, the Uber Cult 45 members, the base, the Al-Qaedas, they couldn't take that they didn't get their stupid wall money, so they started, bitching and moaning and complaining and tweeting and showing up on the TV and yelling and screaming and turning blue in the, oh my God, and the spin. Oh, he's decided to live another day and fight on his own turf, and Jeanine Pirro's giving him, prep talks.
We really have no choice but to build a powerful wall or steel barrier. If we don't get a fair deal from Congress, the government will either shut down on February 15th again, or I will use the powers afforded to me under the laws and the Constitution of the United States to address this emergency.
There is no emergency.
The attacks were immediate, full bore, and relentless. Instead of giving the president credit for recognizing the damage to this country, he was attacked by virtually everyone, Instead of people saying, thank goodness someone in Washington recognizes the need to compromise, someone who actually understands the purpose of government is to serve the people.
Yes.
He sees people who live paycheck to paycheck having a difficult time buying groceries and paying their bills.
Oh, sure he does.
Airports closed, preventing people from business trips, visiting family members, as well as the attendant economic hardships. And unlike the obstructionists and the Trump haters who don't give a damn about ordinary Americans, he simply couldn't let it go on. He did not cave. He made a tactical decision, a strategy decision to pick the ground to fight on. He chose to stop the fight today to fight another day. And that day will be February 15th.
Oh my God, she is such a sycophant. She is in deep. I mean, like, seriously. So the caring for, he sees you, everybody. He saw you suffering. That's why he sent Wilbur Ross on the TV to tell you to go get a loan from your credit union. And the Commerce Department's credit union charges 9%. That's why he did that, and that's why he stood there and he said, hey, your grocer will go along. Hey, your landlord will go along. People will go. Your grocer? Who the hell is your grocer? Mine is a giant box store with, people who had to come out of retirement to check me out, and, the box boy. Very nice people, but it's a giant corporation. What does he think, that we all have, it's like Green Acres or something? You all go to Druckers? What fantasy land does this man live in? He sees you. Meanwhile, he's got these rape fantasies, and it was so amazing because last week the Washington Post heard him for I think he said it 22 times. 22 times in 10 days, Donald Trump made this argument that women are duct taped. Sometimes in his fantasy, he varies it. Like what they're wearing, I guess. He varies it. Sometimes the duct tape is duct tape. Sometimes it's blue tape, painter's tape, which I don't think he knows, the difference. Sometimes it's clear packing tape. Like the kind that the federal workers had to send the Christmas presents back to the Amazon factory, right? So that packing tape that you have to have. Yeah, this is just, and she's sitting out there shilling for him. Your grocer will go along. Go get a loan. It's this is just so serious. And by the way, the numbers are in the first report you heard Standard & Poor estimate that the cost of the shutdown was $6 billion. The wall, 5.7. That was just a down payment, by the way, a prorated down payment over there. But, $6 billion, they said, but the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, they said the federal government shutdown cost the economy $11 billion. That's the new analysis. That's from CBO today. And they said $3 billion of it is a permanent loss. It's a permanent loss in lost economic activity, meaning even when people do get paid, if they get paid on Friday, this is what they're saying. No, they have to go in today. They have to fill out time cards. Keep your fingers crossed. They'll get paid. People can process those time cards. It'll be, although I will tell you, there are people from 2013 who sued for damages because they got slapped with late fees, because they got slapped with overdraft protection, overdraft costs at the bank, because being poor is the most expensive thing that you could do in this country, as you know, right? So those people sued, and that lawsuit began in 2013. It got decided in 2017. That's how long it took to get it decided. The federal court found in favor of the stiffed federal workers, ordered damages, double their salary, be paid to them. And it's now 2019, and guess what? They're still waiting. Still waiting. One of these days. Yeah. So that's the efficiency of, the whole suing through the court thing to get your money. And God help us if that has to happen. But now we have 3 weeks. And the workers are like, listen, we get paid. We sort of kind of know like what to stock up on now. And so many people have quit. So many people have just left and gone into, other endeavors. But the president is just sitting there at his desk saying over and over again that we're going to have to do it. It's a national emergency because there's a rape fantasy that he has in his head. And what was so interesting about this crazy rape fantasy with the duct tape is that the Washington Post tried to find whatever he was relying on to tell you these things, right? They went crazy.
Human traffickers. The victims are women and children. Maybe to a lesser extent, believe it or not, children. Women are tied up, they're bound, duct tape put around their faces, around their mouths. In many cases, they can't even breathe. They're put in the backs of cars or vans or trucks. They don't go through your port of entry. They make a right turn going very quickly. They go into the desert areas or whatever areas you can look at. And as soon as there's no protection, they make a left or a right into the United States of America.
What
There's
is he
nobody
talking
to
about?
catch them. There's nobody to find them.
I'm glad he's not in charge of MapQuest.
They can't come through the port because if they come through the port, people will see 4 women sitting in a van with tape around their face and around their mouth. Can't have that.
4, definitely 4. It's 4 women per van. It's definitely 4, and it's definitely duct tape in this particular version of my fantasy. Sometimes I vary it. What do you vary? The kind of tape. It's like so sick. Because he's been telling this story for a really stinking long time. He did this the other day, too. He said the same thing.
Can come to some sort of agreement. Will you support the results of this?
Well, it depends what the agreement is. I mean, yeah, but if they come to a reasonable agreement, I would support it, yeah.
Even if it has no wall money? Or does it have to have wall money?
I only, look, I have other alternatives if I have to, and I'll use those alternatives if I have to.
You will never
We
do
want to
that.
go through the system. We have to have a wall in this country. We have criminals pouring into our country. And I'm not talking about the southern border. They don't stay there. They go through, they permeate all throughout the country.
They permeate.
Including places like Wisconsin, a lot of different places. And
yes,
that's
Wisconsin
the
is
problem.
very strange and
I
different.
say that we would cut our crime. You know, we're doing very well on crime rate compared to past years and past administrations. But I think our crime rate would go way down. And I know our drug rates, what's happening is the drugs are pouring in. And yes, they come through the ports of entry, but the big trucks come through areas where you don't have a wall and you have wide open spaces. We have to have the wall. You'd stop drugs. You'd stop human trafficking. I mean, human trafficking where they tie up women and they put duct tape in their mouths and they put them in the back seat of a car or in a van. They don't come through a port of entry because the people at the port of entry are going to see that. That's not like hiding drugs in the engine or in the hubcaps, and they have incredible, ingenious ideas. I mean, frankly, I've said some of these people are so genius. If they were ever legit, they'd become very rich people. But what they do is they go through the ports of entry with small stuff, but the big stuff comes through areas where you have nobody watching.
That is not true. There is no evidence for any of that being true or remotely related to the truth or even in the same hemisphere as the truth. Because every fact checker went out and tried to find what is he relying on it. And his riffs on the horrors about the U.S.-Mexico border have absolutely no relationship to what actually goes on. I mean, this has been 2 weeks that he's been talking about tape-gagged women. A January 17th Washington Post article questioned the claim, and he couldn't provide any evidence. And so Donald Trump asked Border Patrol, hey, can you back me up, fellas? And so the Washington Post actually went to the Border Patrol, and the Border Patrol said, we don't know what he's talking about. We have no idea what he's talking about. But apparently it came from those white supremacists that are, remember those three, the bald guys, all 3 bald guys who work for the Border Patrol Council, and they're all white supremacists who I can't say it today, tweet white supremacy and stuff like that. they're the ones that must have, like whispered in his ear to tell this story but the actual Border Patrol workers, the actual people, they said, Kevin McAleenan, he, on behalf of the Office of Customs and Border Protection, he's the commissioner, he asked the agents, he put out like this bolo, be on the lookout for any of the duct tape women, or report to us any duct tape women you've ever seen in the history of your employment with Customs, with Border Patrol, whatever, right? He put out this, because this is what it said. It said, agents should reply within less than 2 hours with any information in any format regarding claims of taped, gagged women. And they linked the Washington Post article to this memo that they sent out for further info. It says this is exact. I'll read you from the actual memo that went out. We require your assistance on a quick turnaround for C1. Well, C1 turns out to be the Border Patrol Commissioner, the Customs and Border Protection Commissioner, Kevin McAleenan. Okay. We require your assistance on a quick turnaround for C1. Please forward any information that you may have in any format regarding claims, quote, that traffickers tie up and silence women with tape before illegally driving them through the desert from Mexico to the United States in the backs of cars or windowless vans. Please see the news article below for reference and further info. And they link the Washington Post article from January 17th. And then in big bold, it says, we require this information to be submitted to, and they give you by 12 Eastern. And this was sent out at 10 o'clock. Acting Assistant Chief Armando Sainz, U.S. Border Patrol Headquarters. Nobody has provided any instance at all about any woman ever taped and gagged and packed into a van or into the back seat of a car. Nope, never heard of it. The border experts and the advocates who actually investigate human trafficking, other reporters, never heard anything like what Trump is talking about. Never heard it. Never saw it. Never. And they're like, please, can you back up the president? Can you back him up? Can you get him? Can you get more information? Can you back up those claims? Much less claims, that it's coming from the president that we have never heard anything about. And they were like, can't do it, Sally. Can't do it. Just can't have it. Can't do it. Can't have it. I can't do it. Can't have
it. All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
What Trump is doing, this wall has become a litmus test for the country. What kind of country are we? I think the Democrats will be able to work with Republicans to put something together that Republicans feel like Trump can accept. He's already backed down. It's not like he has to worry about caving here. He's already caved. The question is, some of it's. I look at this from how do you message these things from the White House? They've already lost the messaging battle on the emergency, because if it was an emergency, we would have already acted. He's like saying, it's an emergency, but I'll give you 3 weeks to talk about the emergency.
Really?
So the Democrats are not going to move on the wall issue, as in we're going to build Trump's wall. They will move, and I think they would gladly move on providing a bunch of money for border security.
So $5.7 billion that you think that they had already worked their way around to it last week.
Yeah.
5.7. We are already hearing. Okay, so $5.7 billion there you think Democrats are willing to give if it's fencing or slats and not a wall, which the president had already worked his way around to. So he will get a win of his last stated goal.
Well, he'll declare victory, but it won't really be a victory. And again, we will continue the policy that we've had. Remember, illegal immigration is at historical lows. There is no crisis at the border. So you've got to start from the place that everything the president's saying is fiction. So it's very hard to negotiate with someone who's dealing with a made-up problem.
Fantasy.
So they will continue, and they will put more resources. Again, this has been building up over the last 10, 12 years. More money, higher, better technology, more border patrol, and it's going to be, the president's just going to have to figure out a way to say, hey, I got what I wanted and move on. Or go to the courts, which he could have done 38 days ago.
Yeah.
And see if the courts let him do it.
The courts will not let him do it, and that's the problem. Also, he's too stupid and lazy to declare a national emergency. That's why he hasn't done it. He would have to, fight his brains out, and the man is too busy watching television and firing now. The workers that have worked for him for 13 years, 14 years, 15 years, 8 years, 3 years with fake IDs, which they all knew about. There's another story. Remember, we went over the New Jersey Golf Club in Bedminster the other, I guess it was in December. We got this story from the New York Times that clearly showed that, because they sat and they did hours of interviews with the people who are here with, no documentation, who have been working with Donald Trump at the Bedminster Golf Club for years and years and years, cleaning his toilet, ironing his white panties, dusting his crystal golf trophies, making his disgusting bed that he has to lie in every day. And they sat down and interviewed a whole bunch of the workers. Some of them were actually brave enough to put their names out there. And Victorina Morales was from Guatemala, and she was a fluffer. And Sandra Diaz, she was from Costa Rica, and that stood out to me because very few people that leave Costa Rica to come here. But she worked at Bedminster, since 2010. All right. And she's been cleaning the villa while the president watched television. It's so funny. They all tell the same story. Just sits there and watches television all day. And she had to, stand there on the sidelines when he was, ferrying people in for cabinet positions, and they were being brought in for interviews. Remember Mitt Romney, after saying Trump is a fraud, he's a phony, and then he said, "Oh, maybe you want me for Secretary of State? I'll be right there," because he has no principles. That Mitt Romney. But then, they started to get very hurt with Trump's comments about how Mexicans were rapists and violent criminals, and they're permeating and infesting, and they have diseases, and they're coming here, and we're seeing diseases we never saw before. I mean, all this fantastical fantasy crap about them. And so they started talking to the newspapers, and they said, "We are tired of the abuse, the insults, the way he talks about us when he knows that we're here helping him make money. We sweat it out to attend to his every need, and we have to put up with his humiliation." So they got a lawyer. They went to a lawyer. Her name's Annabelle Romero. And the reason why I'm saying her name is because she's also now representing the New York, the Westchester Golf Club. That's in the newspapers today about, people working there for 14 years, 15 years, 13 years, 8 years, with green cards that don't even comport to the format of a normal green card. And they all knew it. Everybody knew it. In fact, the one in Bedminster, the manager at Bedminster helped them purchase their green cards that were forged, and helped them purchase forged Social Security cards. Help them, go to the forger to get a permanent resident card. And these women told the story. They said, "Yes, I purchased them from someone in New Jersey who produced counterfeit documents for immigrants." And that when she was told, when she first went there, she said, Miss Morales, when she first went there, she was very excited because she was going to make a whopping $10 an hour, which was higher than the $8.25 an hour she was making cleaning guest rooms at a nearby hotel. And according to her account, when she arrived for the interview with the housekeeping supervisor showed her around, asked her to demonstrate her cleaning profile. How do you clean? How do you do it? What products do you use on what countertops? And, do you use a wet rag, a dry rag, And she told this housekeeping manager that she had no legal working documents. Quote, "I told her I don't have good papers. She told me bring what I used at the hotel." So when they hired her, they knew that she had fake documents. They didn't care. She was hired. Ms. Diaz, she's been working at the club since 2010, tells the same story. One day, he asked her where she was from. She says, I'm from Guatemala. He says, Guatemalans are hardworking people, and he handed her a $50 bill. And she said she told herself, God bless him. He's a good person. But then, all of a sudden, sometime last year when he was running for president, they told the workers there who they knew had forged documents that you need to get better forgeries. No, I'm not kidding. You need to get a new green card and a new Social Security card because there are problems with the ones that you submitted 10 years ago. And so Ms. Morales told the newspaper it wasn't possible to independently confirm, what happened. But Ms. Morales said that she told the manager that she didn't know how to get new forgeries. She hadn't gotten forged documents in years. So the manager suggested that she speak with the maintenance employee because he knew where to get the forged documents. So she did. She went to the maintenance employee who also tells the same story. And he told her that new papers from the forger cost $165, which she didn't have. So she goes back to the manager at Bedminster and she tells him, I don't have $165 to get new forged documents. And he said, don't worry, I'll lend you the money. He lends her $165, and her and the maintenance worker drive to a house in Plainfield, New Jersey. She waits in his car, and he meets somebody inside and comes out with new fake documents, a realistic-looking green card to replace the one that, had expired 10 years earlier, by the way, and a new Social Security card that looked better than the old Social Security card. I mean, that's what you had in December, right? Well, these women, after listening to Trump go on and on and on, they did quit Bedminster. They left. Now today, there's an article in the in the Washington Post, that was the New York Times, in the Washington Post, with the undocumented workers at the Westchester Golf Club, which is just, a few miles north of New York City. And all of a sudden, he goes on a firing spree and he fires a dozen employees at the the Westchester Golf Club. They were called in. It was like a firing squad. They were called in one by one to talk with a human resources executive from Trump headquarters. And each one of them was fired, one by one. And the explanation that one of the women actually recorded it. Can you believe they're all recording each other? Michael Cohen is recording Donald Trump. Omarosa is recording John Kelly. This woman, one of the women that was fired, who had worked there for 14 years, she took her phone in with her and she hit record and she recorded the conversation, and the Washington Post actually sat there and listened to it. They told her, oh, well, after 14 years, we just audited your immigration documents. The ones that she used 14 years earlier, which everybody knew were fake, including the managers at the golf club. She said, I started to cry. And then there's a maintenance worker who worked there for 14 years. He's from Mexico. He said he started to cry. He said, I've worked at the club since 2005. I told them to consider us. I had worked there for almost 15 years. I'd given the best of myself to this job. I had never done anything wrong, only work and work. They said they had no comments to make. He ends up sending his people in there, and he fired half the staff. Half the staff. And then Eric Trump says, We are making a broad effort to identify any employee who has given false and fraudulent documents to unlawfully gain employment. Where identified, any individual will be terminated immediately. This is one of the reasons my father is fighting so hard for immigration reform. The system is broken. Well, you would think that if Trump cared about it, he would run all his employees through the E-Verify system, which is available but not mandatory in New Jersey or New York, and he just refuses. And they asked Eric Trump, why don't you, join the E-Verify system? And will you join the E-Verify? No comment. No comment. Another, Margarita Cruz, the one that actually taped the conversation, she said, she's been working there 8 years. And they said absolutely nothing. They never said your social security number is bad or something is wrong. 8 years at the club. Nothing until now.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Here's one of the Freedom Crackers in 2016.
And I put together the team, actually with the speaker and others, our staff, working on legislation now. So when we're sworn in, not waiting till when the president is sworn in, but at the very first week of January, how we are able to move the legislation needed to start building the wall.
At the end of the day, why should Democrats bail out your party that had 2 years to figure out a way forward here? You said you were going to have legislation ready to go in 2017. What happened?
We did. If you look at the appropriations, we are building the wall right now, a portion of it. We have to go further.
Then why did he shut down the government?
He did not shut down the government. Let's be very clear. We were in the House, in the majority. We moved a bill to the Senate. You know as well as everybody else in America, it takes 60 votes. Schumer is the one who said no. So you put it on
the DACA for the walls, the president backed away from.
No. We passed this at the end of last year. Money for the wall, more money because we're already building it. We put another $5 billion in there. The Senate had a different version, and Schumer said no, so it got shut down. Then what happened? The president stayed in Washington. The speaker then went to Hawaii. The president stayed there to negotiate. We brought meetings down. They said they wouldn't talk about anything. We got into a shutdown that lasted longer ever before. The president made 4 different offers that were reasonable.
Not until after he shut down the government.
He didn't shut it down.
He's the one that said he'd...
He's the one who said it. Who did that? Who the hell do you think did it? And who's threatening to do it again? Who is threatening to do it again? Who is saying that he'll declare a national emergency, which he will not do because he's just too lazy. He's too lazy and he's too stupid to figure out how to do it. So that's not going to happen. Meanwhile, now he's going through, his golf club and he's firing all these people who have worked for him for 14, 15 years because he's got rape fantasies. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And of course, in 2013, I just want you to know, that same freedom cracker there, that same dude, that same caucus, which is the Tea Party, you understand. There was a Senate bill with $46 billion, $46 billion in it, passed by something called the Gang of Eight, bipartisan bill for a comprehensive immigration reform package that would have secured the border, hired more border agents, whatever they wanted, okay? All of it was in that bill. It passed the Senate, and they wouldn't take it up in the House. And you know why? Because Republicans who lobby these freedom crackers don't want to do without cheap labor. They don't want E-Verify, which is part of that package. They don't want to stop the influx of people because they need them. Who do you think works in slaughterhouses? Every kitchen in America is run by brown people. This is ridiculous. Republicans don't want an end to this. And that's why you can't get comprehensive immigration reform. That's why he keeps telling you some stupid wall. And everybody knows a stupid wall doesn't have a chance of doing anything to solve any issue that you might have. With regard to drugs pouring in, they come through the legal ports of entry in giant trucks full of cans of food or full of coffee or whatever. And the drugs are in the middle of the pallets. And, you know, this man is just, he's got these fantasies. And of course, it's all a con to make the base think he cares about your white supremacist views on brown people. He needs an enemy, and he has chosen, and that is his enemy. And every dictator needs an enemy. Every single last one. And every dictator tries to sow chaos. And every dictator tries to make Congress irrelevant to their decisions. Every single dictator. It's the same exact prescription for dictatorships. You know, there's a I don't remember if it's on Netflix. I think it might be on Netflix, called The Rise to Dictatorship, and it looks at every one of them. It looked at Saddam Hussein, it looked at Mussolini, it looks at Hitler, it looks at all of them. Franco. This man is Mussolini. That's who he is. And that did not work out well. But that's exactly who he is. This is exactly what he does. The first thing they go after is the judiciary. They pack it with friendlies so that the judiciary will give the president extraordinary powers, where the Congress, the co-equal branch of government known as Congress in a democracy, is defanged, it's neutered, it doesn't have any power over the executive. The executive can do whatever he wants. So that's why they go after the judiciary at first. And then they you know, when Congress has no say and he starts declaring national emergencies, then all of a sudden he befriends the military. Right? And the military and the armed police in this country, the Border Patrol or whatever it is that he made friends with, they will put down any effort by the people, even though the people are the ones who are starving, even though the people are the ones that, the same people that voted for him are the ones he will deprive of food, of a decent life, of jobs, of income, all this stuff. But he will keep pointing to whoever his fake foil is and say, that's what's responsible for your lot in life, not me, not my government shutdown, not the fact that you can't earn a living anymore, not that, the contractors. There are 10,000 plus government contractors. Many, 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 many of them are small businesses. They will never recover. Never. There are stories today, front page of the newspaper. A woman, she works for a contractor. She does audits on pipelines and things like that. She's been working there 20 years. She knows her job. She's good at it, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, the contractor she works for, because, of course, we have to privatize everything. So now we have contractors that do all this stuff, and the contractors get paid, the same thing, I guess, as the government employees, but without the benefits, without the pension, without the guarantee of civil service, right? All that. Anyway, this woman has worked for this small contractor for years and years and years. That's where she gets her health insurance. And the guy who runs this small business, he is borrowing $1 million, okay? $1 million to front load his business to make the $60,000 payment or the $600,000 payment, all the payments he has to make to keep his company open, and he can't borrow another nickel and he can't get another dime. Sorry, Wilbur, you're wrong. And so he had to cancel their health insurance plan. This woman's husband has multiple sclerosis, and yes, her husband has Medicare, but, it doesn't cover all prescriptions. And the particular drug he needs to keep his MS in check, you know what the copay is? $7,600. And her health insurance was canceled. So she has nothing to help her make that copay. And her husband, she thought, she said, I think this is the year I lose him. This is going to be the year I lose him. This is so sick. These contractors will never, ever be okay. Ever. It's so sad. It's so sick. And he's still talking about, on the 15th, I might shut it down again. And all these federal workers, who are going to get paid someday, they're still freaked out because it's temporary.
Very happy that the government is open and that people are able to get retro paid. which is exciting for my family, but I also don't want us to be in the same situation 3 weeks from now. But my wife is a federal employee also, so we've had no income coming in the house for the last, since December 22nd, around Christmas time. So it's been very stressful for us. When it becomes politics with my life, I get very concerned.
Merry Christmas. I thought Trump said he was going to say Merry Christmas, right? We had a war on Christmas. He had a war on Christmas. He had the war on freaking Christmas.
Sandwich. Would you like a soup as well?
Super sandwich, thank you.
We're going to be watching what happens during these next 3 weeks. If for some reason things go wrong again, we will be there for them.
Green apples, orange.
For me, it was always a dream to be a public servant, and I've been working with USAID for 2 years. This was a big dream of mine to be with USAID, but after this experience, now this is the second shutdown that I've been through in this last 2 years. It's been really tough for me to stand by the mission and, and do my work knowing that I have all of these additional personal risks that I have to take.
We are not as bad off as some others, but I talked to a coworker yesterday who already is on food stamps, and there are people crying at work. It's been hard to watch my friends go through.
There's a great possibility that we could be back here in 3 weeks, so I'm going to just keep on preparing for that and pray and hope for the best.
Now we need our politicians to show us why we put them in power. They need to lead us, and they need to lead us moving America forward, not shutting down America.
That's Chef Jose Andres, who has been cooking for the federal employees who have not been able to afford meals. The last girl that you heard, she worked for the Department of Justice. The girl before that works for USAID. They can't. This was their dream, to work for USAID, to be in public service. Some of them, Peace Corps or whatever, or help underserved, neighborhoods or whatever. And they just can't bear the risk anymore of a crazy president. So the shutdown cost the economy $11 billion, according to the Congressional Budget Office. So in a very real sense, Trump found a way for all of us to pay for the wall without getting the wall. Isn't that a good result? Oh, he's so smart. He's a stable genius, that man. Gary in Fort Lauderdale.
Hey, Randy, it's a power trip for the guy, how he can turn things on and off and screw with people's lives like this. It's disgusting. But you were talking about MS-13. I got stuck on a boat the other day for 6 hours on a trip with these 3 people from Texas. And they were telling me how over there MS-13 rules and how everyone's afraid of them, and all the crime is committed by MS-13, and they're growing by leaps and bounds. And I said, I never had anything to do with MS-13. The only thing I hear about MS-13 is when they talk about him on Fox News. He says, oh, no, they're the worst thing in this country. So these people over there somehow are terrified of them, and I'm not even sure they even exist.
Well, if they do, then it's like 5th, 6th generation, because that gang, like Hell's Angels and the other gangs, the white supremacists in this country, they're natives. They were born here, those kids. They didn't just come here. They were born here, and they're imagining things. I mean, have you seen a lot of news about, MS-13? I haven't seen a lot of news. No.
As a matter of fact, it's funny you should say that about generational.
I just saw a bank robbery in Sebring on Friday, Florida, which is right here.
A white kid.
A white kid killed like 5 people. I saw that. And
just like the white kid in Tennessee.
Like the white kid in Tennessee, like the white kid at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, like the white kid at the Aurora movie theater, like the white kid who blew up the Murrow Federal Office building, like the white guy that, was in Waco. I mean, I just don't see, ISIS or MS-13 or even the Hells Angels, because they're elderly,
Randy, the
doing
day's
stuff.
Come. The day's going to come, and we have a Democrat in the White House. And then he's going to be able to use the same trick that Trump is using, where we have an emergency. We have a white supremacy emergency. We have a gun violence emergency. We have a global warming emergency. And the worm will turn when that happens.
Well, I hope not, because that's not the way that you...
No, it's not how it should be.
No, you build consensus. And,
I agree.
Yeah. And of course, what Trump has done is he has sold white supremacy as his reason for being president. And 33% of this country bought it. But I will tell you the good news today. Only 28% of Americans believe this country is going in the right direction. 63% think we're on the wrong track. If you don't think that that's enough to sustain an impeachment of him for colluding, conspiring, for, asking Russia to help him, I think the time is right.
I hope you're right.
I do. I think the time is completely right. I think this is a ripe issue. Listen, I will play you on the other side of this break. I'll play you John Brennan, the former CIA director, because he thinks what I think, and that is that Mueller is hardly done. That Mueller went after the actual national security threats first, which were the Russian hackers, which were the Russian oligarchs. But Mueller has already indicted 6 Trump associates now. 6. And there's about 6 more to go. And Brennan thinks what I think, and that there's about 6 more to go. He doesn't give a number like that, but he says there are going to be many more. There are going to be more. And, Donna Summer said it best. More. How do you like it? But it's going to be Junior. It's going to be Jared. I don't know about Bannon. Bannon will probably cooperate. But there's going to be 6 more.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
All right, here's the former CIA director, who was CIA director when Russia was hacking us, John Brennan.
In the summer of 2016, we were watching what was happening in terms of what was being released by WikiLeaks and how the Russian hand was behind this. And so the intermediaries was something that was looked at very closely by the FBI and others. So again, this indictment is not surprising in any respect. Elise.
How many more indictments would you expect among the senior Trump campaign officials that are referenced in here? Stone told senior Trump campaign officials about materials possessed by Organization 1 WikiLeaks. So that's in the multiple. And then also there is a Trump supporter that Stone was interfacing with about the WikiLeaks drop.
Well, I expect that probably within the next 60 days, you're going to have a fair number of indictments. A fair number, a significant number of indictments.
Significant.
I think people are waiting for the report that is coming out from Mueller, but what I look for most is the indictments, and it's so rich in detail. To me, I think all of these indictments are going to be basically the compendium of the Robert Mueller investigation, special counsel's investigation. So I expect there to be a significant number, and a significant number of names that are going to be quite familiar to the average American.
Oh, quite familiar to the average American. So let's see. Is the name Jerome Corsi familiar to the average American? I don't know. But if I had a camera crew right now, see, all I got is like a little camera on a stick. Camera on a stick. But if I had a crew, right, I would be outside Jerome Corsi's house right freaking now. Just like, people knew to be outside of Roger Stone's house. Yeah. I would know to be outside Jerome Corsi's house right now. You know who else's house I would want to be in front of, in the next 60 days? I would want to be in front of Steve Bannon's house. I would want to be in front of Hope Hicks's house. I would want to be in front of Jared Kushner's house. I would want to be in front of Junior's house. And I would want to be in front of Mike Pence's house. And that's just naming a few who are very familiar to the American people. Just saying. And then you got the whole big, report. And you know what? If they sit on the report for some strange reason, if we do get Mr. Barr as our Attorney General, and he decides, America can't handle the truth, whatever, right? And he won't release it. And of course, Adam Schiff and Gerald Nadler on Judiciary and the House Oversight Committee and all these people, they will subpoena the hell out of, the Mueller office. They will subpoena, the president. They will subpoena to get this. But even not, you know what I'll do? You know what I'll do? I'll take all the indictments, all of them, beginning with the 13 Russian intelligence operatives and the 23 Russian companies, and the indictment of Roger Stone, the indictment of Michael Cohen, all the speaking indictments, and we'll lay them all out and read them. And then you could do the math and find out if there was a conspiracy to defraud the United States. Here's John Brennan saying that, his investigation when he was there was rather intense.
I know that in the summer of 2016, I had numerous conversations with Jim Comey about what was happening in terms of what the Russians were doing, what was being pushed out publicly, how they got access to the information, who might have facilitated the release of information. And so whether or not, Roger Stone was involved in any of that, again, I defer to the special counsel's office. It was an ongoing, very intense investigation at that time to see what U.S. persons or officials might have been working with the Russians, either wittingly or unwittingly, to interfere in the election.
As you say, Director Brennan, we'll wait to see Mueller's report till we get the full picture of all this, but we do have a lot of pieces of it now that we've seen cooperation agreements and now indictments. What's the story, as you see it, that Mueller has begun to tell with the public information that we have?
That there was an extensive effort to try to influence the outcome of the election that involved the Russians, that involved U.S. persons, and that may have gone to the very top of the Trump campaign. And so I think the shoes that are yet to drop are going to be the ones that are going to be the most profound and that will hit the people at the top of the organization. Who that is?
Top of the organization, meaning Donald Trump?
It may be, may not.
Including family members?
Well, I think, clearly they have been talked to. They've been interviewed by the FBI. I think there's a fair amount of vulnerability that they might have on this. But again, I defer to the special counsel's office to make the determination about whether what they did crossed that threshold from collusion, which I think is quite evident, to criminal conspiracy. And it's whether or not it's past that threshold that is going to lead into an indictment of individuals that are close to Mr. Trump, that are part of his family, or others.
You've got Russia.
Yeah. It's the former CIA director who, along with the former FBI director, was already investigating meddling by the Russians and interference by the Russians. And they were already investigating if any U.S. persons. And the answer is clearly there were many U.S. persons. Remember who's cooperating. Remember Michael Flynn is cooperating. Remember Rick Gates, Manafort's partner, is cooperating. Remember Felix Sater, Michael Cohen's buddy from Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, is cooperating. Remember, Weisselberg, the CFO of the Trump Organization, is cooperating. Remember, Michael Cohen is cooperating. There's so many more shoes to fall. And Congress, too. Let's not forget that Nunes, as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and all these freaks of nature in the freedom crackers, right? That they were all obstructing the investigation. That they didn't want to call back Roger Stone, even though they knew he lied. They didn't want to call back Jr., even though they found out in the press that he had lied to them. They didn't want to subpoena any documents. They didn't want to talk to Flynn again. They didn't want to talk to Rick Gates. They didn't want to talk to Michael Cohen, even though they knew Michael Cohen had lied to them. They obstructed justice, too, and I wouldn't be surprised if Devin Nunes is also in a barrel.
Well, Bob Mueller has the advantage of a lot of evidence that we don't. We were really circumscribed to what we could look at. For example, we wanted to try to compel some of the witnesses that Mr. Stone alluded to come in and testify. We wanted to try to test what Don Jr. and others were telling us. We wanted to get phone records. We couldn't do that, but Bob Mueller has been able to do that. And I would expect, George, that if there is a conspiracy to defraud the United States, a collusion indictment, it would be the last indictment that Bob Mueller would seek, not the first.
Right.
We'll have to wait to see what evidence he produces. But
hurry up.
you certainly do have to ask the question over and over again, if there were innocent explanations for all of this, why all the lies? Why all the repeated efforts to get Russian help? And of course, you have this symmetry of interest here where Donald Trump wants help from the Russians with his campaign. He wants help from the Russians to build this lucrative Moscow tower. And the Russians want help from Donald Trump. They want sanctions relief. And all of this is going on at the same time.
Not only is it going on at the same time, but they've given even more sanctions relief. Even more sanctions relief. So, I mean, everybody understands that the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, has removed sanctions on Oleg Deripaska's businesses, right?
The Trump administration tonight lifting the sanctions on 3 Russian companies with ties to controversial Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska. Let's get right to CNN national security analyst Samantha Vinograd, who worked under the Obama administration. So, Sam, explain the significance of the Treasury Department's move. Why lift these Russian sanctions right now?
Well, let's first start with why they were implemented in the first place. I worked for President Bush and for President Obama and looked at these kind of sanctions decisions. And typically, sanctions policy is really driven by punishing bad behavior. Oleg Deripaska was listed along with 6 other oligarchs back in April because Oleg Deripaska was deemed to be working on behalf of the Russian Federation, the Russian government. 3 companies affiliated with him were listed, 1, because they were controlled by him directly or indirectly, and 2nd, because the latter 2 were subsidiaries of the original one, the EN Group. The decision to lift sanctions in this case, which really means removing these companies from what's called the SDN list, the Specially Designated Nationals list, means that people can do business with them. There's no punishment for that. The sanctions against these companies, however, were never actually implemented, despite the fact that they were listed back in April. There have been these general licenses that have allowed business to continue. The significance of lifting these sanctions today means that these companies can operate as normal. And the question is, has Oleg Deripaska really, truly diminished his control in these companies so that he can't benefit from them and so that the Kremlin can't benefit from them? And there's a lot of controversy around that, Anna. The Secretary of the Treasury briefed Congress. He wrote a letter to Congress really laying out the terms of a deal that he made with Deripaska and implying that Deripaska's control was really diluted and diminished. Leaked documents since that briefing took place really suggest otherwise, and because of that, we could see Congress revisit their decision to allow the lifting of these sanctions to go forward.
Come on, Congress! No, I mean, it's so unbelievable, right? They got everything so far that they wanted from, and you know what, I don't know if you know this today, but Russia not only has taken over Venezuela's oil industry, which is the purpose of, supporting Maduro in the first place, who is starving his people, literally. And do not tell me he's a socialist. He is a fascist, okay? He's a fascist dictator. He is one of the most corrupt oligarchs since Vladimir Putin. And, this is crazy that we have this now in our hemisphere, and 3 Citgo refineries owned by Venezuela now belong to Vladimir Putin. Oh my God, this whole thing is so sick. But Vladimir Putin's getting everything he wants. And Oleg Deripaska, who contracted with Paul Manafort, and I believe to get this media plan out of Paul Manafort to launch this kind of a propaganda campaign against U.S. voters in order to get a very stupid, idiot, somebody, that could be blackmailed, somebody that is compromised, somebody that was cultivated by Vladimir Putin, somebody whose ego was so big that Vladimir Putin could just compliment him and then promise him, the biggest deal of his life, the tallest building in Europe, which is what Trump Tower Moscow was supposed to be, the tallest building in Europe, and a $300 million payday, the biggest deal he'd ever done in exchange for lifting sanctions, in exchange for looking the other way, in exchange for, it's just so unbelievable. It's just so unbelievable. And these Republicans in the House, oh my God, they ran interference for this guy. They're all going too. At least Nunes, at least little Devin. How hard would it have been after the Trump Tower meeting, where we know that Donald Trump Jr. placed a phone call to a blocked number? And we all need to know whether or not that was a call to his daddy to tell him, we got it. We got the Russian goods. They're going to deliver. How hard would it be for Devin Nunes, little Devin Nunes, to have, gone to AT&T or Verizon or whoever it is and subpoenaed those and figured out whether or not that block number was Trump's blocked number? Now, they covered.
Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
But when you look at the totality of what's going on here, and you look at the chronology, we know that the Russians told the Trump campaign as early as April of 2016 that they had the stolen emails. We know that they offered dirt to the president's son, Don Jr., and he said he would love to have the Russian government help with that. And then we know that some person directed a senior campaign official to reach out to Roger Stone to find out what WikiLeaks had gotten from the Russians. And then, of course, you have the president publicly calling for the Russians to help with those stolen emails. And all of this taking place while Donald Trump is pursuing what would probably be the most lucrative deal of his entire life, and one that requires Kremlin approval, this Moscow Trump Tower. And then, of course, all of the above, lying about all of the above. 100 contacts, but probably 1,000 lies. And it's that bigger, broader picture that Mueller's looking into.
Seriously, all this is going on in plain sight. Now, we saw him say Russia, if you listen. That was in July. June 9th, Junior has the meeting the month before. In April, the Russians are hacking. In May, our intelligence community the DNC knows it's Russia. The intelligence community, tells us that Russia has hacked into the DNC. You got Roger Stone, in October. In October, you got Rudy Giuliani talking to the field office at the FBI in New York. I mean, all this going on all at the same time. But no, there was nothing wrong here. No, nothing to see here. Just move along. Oh, please. This is ridiculous. If Trump campaign aides knew, and of course they did, that the Russian government had taken stolen documents, had hacked, had committed a crime, a criminal activity of hacking into the DNC and the RNC, for all we know, right? Because Lindsey Graham says his emails were hacked. And they knew that what the Russians had given to WikiLeaks was stolen. And they sent people over here to tell them personally, we have stolen stuff, we want to give it to you. And the reaction from the Trump campaign is, if you say it is what it is, if it is what you say it is, I love it. And Bannon is at that meeting, and Manafort is at that meeting, and Jared is at that meeting, and Junior is at that meeting, and Natalia Veselnitskaya, who's now been indicted, is at that meeting, and the Crocus Group, who are the builders. They're the ones that built all the amphitheaters, the performing centers in Russia, where he had the Miss Universe pageant. They're at this meeting. Oh, please. We didn't do anything wrong. And then Junior leaves the meeting and calls a block number. That's in June. And July, all of a sudden, he pulls out of his ass Russia. If you're listening, I hope you can find the 30,000 emails that are missing. Now, they're going to try and tell you knowing someone else's crime, knowing that someone else committed a criminal act is not a crime. But receiving stolen goods is, and being an accessory after the fact is, and a conspiracy to defraud the United States is, and asking for foreign help in an American presidential election is, getting foreign help is. All that you need for a conspiracy is for two or more people to agree to do something that the law forbids. Well, fencing stolen goods is a crime. Allowing for a foreign government to, participate in our election, even if all they provided was a legal service, that's a crime. Taking illegally gotten goods and using it, deploying it for your benefit is obviously a crime. So let's not kid ourselves here. Something is about to happen. And when it does, I don't know what Russia's going to do. Do you? Because they're already in our hemisphere now. We know that, right? And just so you know how Maduro did what Maduro did. Maduro did exactly what Trump's doing, and I'll show you, okay? Last year, Maduro started to stack their Supreme Court with loyalists, Maduro loyalists. Just like we had Gorsuch, just like we've got Kavanaugh, just like Mitch McConnell ran interference so he wouldn't have Merrick Garland and held that seat open for a year to get a friendly, packing the court with friendlies, loyalists. And then the Supreme Court stripped what their National Assembly, their Congress, stripped them of its authority to say anything about the economy, to have absolutely no power of the purse any longer. Just like Trump wants to declare a national emergency, so he transfers the power of the purse from Congress to himself. And then in March of 2017, the judicial branch in Venezuela literally dissolved the Congress altogether. There was a national outcry. And so they reconstituted. They reversed their decision, the judiciary did, and they said, okay, you could have a national assembly, you can have, but they reduced their powers, especially over the purse. And they gave that to the executive, Maduro. And then in June of 2017, Maduro held an election, a rigged one, to create a body that would replace the Congress, one that would have the authority to rewrite the country's constitution. And in that rigged election, all the 545 seats in the National Assembly and the Congress went to Maduro loyalists. That is how you do it without firing a shot. That is the prescription that Trump is following. That is what this dictator of ours sees as Plan B. Should indictments come down, and if Russia, Russia landed bombers in Venezuela a couple months ago to show the United States, Venezuela and Maduro are, with us, protected by us. We fly missions with them. You take him on, you take us on. And the only way to counter this is through sanctions, because you don't want to go to war in Venezuela. I mean, that would just be plain stupid when you have all kinds of tools in your toolbox. So if Trump orders sanctions against Venezuelan oil, does that include what Russia bought from Maduro? I don't know. And if you're taking sanctions off of Russian aluminum companies owned by, are you going to put sanctions on the Russian oil fields that they purchased from Maduro by giving him gold and money, which Maduro pocketed because he's an oligarch too, just like Putin? Don't tell me he's a socialist. That's ridiculous. He's an oligarch. He's disgusting. So you can kind of see why the judicial branch is so important. You can see why national emergencies are so important. You can see why hobbling Congress is a main component. Like Hitler called it the Enabling Act, okay, where he took away the powers from the Reichstag, from their Congress, and he gave it to himself. And Maduro, he had the support of some Venezuelans, a minority of them, but some of them in very rural areas, just like here. They believed that he was going to, let their plight be known, and he was going to cure it, and he was going to, give them, the largesse of the Venezuelan oil industry. No, he kept it for himself. He kept it for himself, and he sold it off to the Russians and kept the money for himself, kept the gold for himself. That's kind of, what an oligarch does, just so you know. So now we have it in our hemisphere. And now we have Russians owning 3 refineries in freaking Texas. This is very sick. It's very twisted. Gary in California.
Oh, happy birthday, Randy.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being just so informative every single day.
Oh, thank you.
Just want to say thank you, and you have 11 podcasts and some change to give away.
Oh, no. Oh, thank you, Gary. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We love you.
Oh, I love you, too. Thank you so much. Oh, we need that so badly. Oh my God! I check late at night. I go and I check, and when I go to check to see, like what we did for the day, I shake. Thank you, Gary. Carol in New York.
Happy birthday to you, my goddess. This is Carol Marie Troll, my goddess. I couldn't pass the day without giving happy birthday to you.
Oh, thank you, Jazz Chick. I love you. Thank you.
I love you more.
Oh my God, to have you sing happy birthday to me, that's like so, I got chills. That was moving. Thank you.
I couldn't pass it up, but I just had to say, remember now, I alone can fix it.
Yes, that's it. That's the dictator's screed. That's what they tell everybody. Seriously.
And he's fixed nothing. He's destroyed everything.
Everything. It's so interesting, but there were two polls today. There's an NBC Wall Street Journal that asked a really good question. There's an ABC Washington Post one, too. But the NBC Wall Street Journal asked people to say a word or a short phrase that would sum up their feeling about the country under Trump. And here are some of the words and phrases: wrong track, disarray, turmoil, shambles, declining, polarized, worried, concerned, times are grim. I
mean, Jesus, can we please find some relief?
I know, I want it. And let me tell you what my girlfriend Karen, who is my best friend in the whole wide world, gave me. This is just this little tiny sliver of a bracelet here. It's so cute. This was for Roger Stone's indictment for his arrest. It says, "Hallelujah, motherfuckers." I know. Tell me I'm not loved and respected by my girls. I love my girls. Thank you, Carol. Thank you.
And listen, darling.
Okay.
I do have something coming for you.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I totally do. I've been out here trying to book these gigs and what have you, but
yeah, I know.
I'm going to be there.
I love you.
I always know I'm here. I love you more.
You're the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sweetie.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, Carol Marie. She's the jazz chick. If you follow me at Randi Rhodes, you'll see Carol. You'll see Carol there. She's amazing. Asani in Michigan.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Asani.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of all the Facebook, all the people on the chat room.
Mm-hmm.
All of them. I'm not going to name no name, but you got like a lot of people out there.
Oh, thank you, chat room. Thank you very, very much. Thank
Facebook
you.
Chat room, all of them. And I'm not going to say a lot, but Randy, I just want to say thank you for what you do. You are really, 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 really helping us.
Well, it goes both ways, Asani. You know it does. You've heard from me personally because I appreciate you so very much.
That's right.
So it's.
And I'm going to say something to you. I have a lot of African dress in here.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna text you this tonight, and you send me your address. I'm gonna give you some, but it's gonna be from me and for all the people in the chat room on Facebook. Okay?
What a lovely thing.
Keep
Thank
it
you.
up.
Thank you, Asani.
I give thanks.
Bye. Yes, I will.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I love him. Judy in California.
Hi, Randy.
Hi,
Happy
Judy.
birthday.
Thank you.
You are brilliant. You are beautiful, and you are kind.
I'm finding out that men don't like that, though.
I think enough of them do.
My father used to tell me that. I swear to God, my father. That was one of the best presents I got, I have to say. My cousins all got together yesterday, and there was about 25 of us. It's just an amazingly huge family. And they're my father's side, right? And so instead of gifts, Howard told them to bring photos because I don't have a whole lot of photos from my dad. And I got the best freaking photos of my dad yesterday. I spent all last night, putting them in frames. That was that was the best present you could have given me. I just freaking loved that. So
I sent you 3 podcasts today.
Thank you. Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Well,
but-
we'll pay it forward all through the week because, now that's like 14. So we'll have to give them away like 5 a day every day for, the next few days.
Days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You make me cry. So my father, this is the point of bringing up my father. So my father told me when I was very young, before I had boobs and everything, he said, Randy, your sister is very pretty and not so smart. She's going to find a husband and marry well. You, on the other hand, you are not so pretty and you are very smart. You better find a career. And people think that's so hurtful, but you have to remember the era. You have to remember the time. And our president of these United States comes from that psychological dumping ground. And the beauty is he got his ass handed to him by Nancy Pelosi. I love that. I love that.
It's the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
When white supremacists march and murder in Charlottesville or massacre innocent worshipers in a Pittsburgh synagogue, that's not our America. When we have children in cages crying for their mothers and fathers, don't you dare call that border security. That's a human rights abuse. And that's not our America. When we have leaders who attack public schools and vilify public school teachers, that is not our America. When bankers who crashed our economy get bonuses, but the workers who brought our country back can't even get a raise, that's not our America. And when American families are barely living paycheck to paycheck, what is this administration's response? Their response is to try and take health care away from millions of families. Their response is to give away $1 trillion to the biggest corporations in this country. And their response is to blame immigrants as the source of all our problems. And guys, let's understand what's happening here. People in power are trying to convince us that the villain in our American story is each other. But that is not our story. That is not who we are. That is not our America.
So that was Kamala Harris in Oakland, California, the place of her birth, giving a rally, a really amazing speech. And, it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to stand in front of that many people and deliver an emotional, impassioned, resonant, difficult, uncomfortable conversation like that. I think she did a really, really good job in Oakland over the weekend. And tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific, you mountain people, you freak me out. But I guess that's 8 o'clock your time. She is going to be holding a town hall, I believe, on CNN. So stay tuned for that because she's running. She is truly, truly running. Now, we're going to have a lot of choices. There's no question about it. Elizabeth Warren is a choice. Obviously, Joe Biden is deciding. I don't know if he's going to be a choice. All of a sudden, Howard from Canarsie, my neighborhood. Yes, my neighborhood. I have this affinity for Howard Schultz only because he's from Canarsie, Brooklyn, which is where I'm from, too. And I also like the way he treated his employees when he was a CEO of Starbucks, which he is no longer. But I think he was the first person to allow part-time workers to buy into the stock plan, to buy into the 401k. I think he gave health benefits to people with partners, not necessarily married people, which would benefit, me. I should go work at Starbucks so that, I could get health care for my whole freaking family. But he is considering not running as a Democrat. He says if he ran as a Democrat, he might have to be disingenuous. Why? I have no idea. Howard, I just want to tell you, Democrats come in all flavors. We come in all shapes. We come in all sizes. We come from all ideologies. You got your progressives over here. That would be me. You got your centrists over there. That would be like a Nancy Pelosi. You got your corporate. Those would be the blue dogs over there. You know what I mean? If you can't find a place where you fit in and run as a Democrat, please do not run. Because an independent in this particular election cycle would be like a Ross Perot. It would siphon off votes from people who would vote for a Democrat. It would. It would split our party. Because only the tiny little, 26% of this country is Republican. And of those 26%, 80% of them still support this maggot. Okay? 80% of them still want to wear a soily little cap that says MAGA on it. They're maggots. They're Al-Qaeda. They're the base. They're Cult 45. And 80% of 26% ain't enough. He's not going to take Wisconsin this time. He's not going to take Michigan this time. He's not going to take Pennsylvania this time. Even if the Russians start putting out all kinds of crazy memes, and they're still doing it. But if you have an independent, another billionaire no less, not to, blame you for your own success, because that's not my style. But, if you have an independent candidate who's from Brooklyn and is appealing because he ran his business in a way that you would hope other people would, it's just going to peel off votes from whoever the Democratic nominee is. Bernie is probably running again. People are going to have to decide. We haven't even had the first debate yet, okay? We know Elizabeth Warren is running, and we know that she put out a tax plan to tax the 1/10 of 1%, which is 10 million and above. Not on the whole 10 million, but on every dollar over 10 million. That's like 70%, which is what you want to do. The best economy we ever had was when we did that kind of a progressive tax structure. That's when we were able to build, and that's when we were able to electrify, and that's when we were able to build infrastructure, and everybody had a decent job, and people had what they call here's a phrase from the Wayback Machine: disposable income. Disposable income, meaning income you could dispose of by allowing yourself to have a television set, a car, a home that you owned, a mortgage, maybe another television set, maybe a second car. Disposable income. Right now, you got 50% of this country making less than $50,000. It's just so sick. It's just so crazy. It's just so wrong. It's ugly. You want to see what the eventual result is? Here, I'm going to show you something. This is going to break your heart. This is CNN did an exclusive inside report on Venezuela. Want to see what it looks like when an oligarch takes over your country? You want to see? Watch this.
But here is what the last week inside Venezuela looked like.
Cross into Venezuela's unending disaster, the world's worst growing refugee crisis. And it's like the world, as you know it, is slowly ending. Oil once made them the richest in South America, but this is now the line for 3 days and nights to get a full tank.
Oh, God.
In the capital, there's a queue for everything, everywhere. Hunger breeds a special kind of anger.
this is how hyperinflation works. These groceries cost $50 now, but because of what's happening with the local currency, they'll be worth double at least by next month.
Oh
People
my
paying
God.
tomorrow's prices today.
There's no queuing for the youngest, living off what, even here, nobody wants. This isn't play, it's practice for self-defense. My brother got killed in July by another gang, says 14-year-old Usmaria. They found the body in the river. We gather stuff, we beg a piece of chicken skin to take home. In the socialist utopia that now leaves nearly every stomach empty. This was the day when change was meant to come. Hundreds of thousands flooding central Caracas, watching opposition leader Juan Guaido swear himself in as interim president. But it fast turned sour. They've had this standoff outside the military airfield here for months. But this is the first time with an opposition leader claiming the presidency. All eyes were on the army and whether it too would rise up.
This is the important question really in the standoff. It's about the military's vote. They may be throwing stones at them here, but what they really need is the army to switch sides.
Switch sides.
That didn't happen. And the police tear gas and motorcycle charges sent us fleeing down side streets.
Yes, I know.
Some likely wounded, although dozens reported dead during the day. It was up here, in the normally loyal slums, where the fight was nastiest. Special forces entered these streets. They've been coming back to make arrests all during the afternoon, when we're invited to meet Carolina's extended family, where Maduro's base has long lived.
The base.
State handouts bought their loyalty for years. But now this is all she has to feed for this day. And they say now they too want Maduro gone.
That's what it looks like. And you know, what has happened here is that Putin has purchased Maduro. So be very, very scared if Putin has a friendly U.S. president, because when Maduro became Putin's puppet, he allowed Putin to gobble up all the resources. And Putin did it not just to stick a stick in the eye of the United States, but to expand again the Soviet Union. Now, this is exactly what Mussolini did in Italy, okay? Mussolini wanted to, get redemption for, losing, the African continent. So Mussolini invaded Ethiopia. I swear to God, got his ass kicked, too. Ethiopia. And then he started invading Britain and France and got his ass kicked. And finally, the Italians, okay, enough of this fascism. Oh, no, enough of Mussolini. You could go now. And, he tried to flee. He tried to make it to Austria. They found him, and they killed him and hung him. After he was dead, him and his mistress, from, Central Square in a piazza in Italy. Actually, from a gas station. But, I mean, this is just so unbelievable. Here's Putin, flexing his muscle in Asia, in our hemisphere, in Venezuela, and now in the United States of America. Are you freaking kidding me? No good can come from this. No good can come. And what was the price? The price for purchasing Maduro was $1.5 billion. For the low bargain basement price of $1.5 billion, Maduro sold out his people, his country, his base. They could all starve for all he cared. And it's the same damn thing that could happen here if people don't, if law doesn't work, if the Justice Department is broken, if the judiciary branch is broken, if Congress is corrupt. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. Wake up the maggots. I don't know what else to call. I don't know what else to tell you. But you're the first to go. You're the first to go because you're the least able to put up a fight. Don't you get it? And all it takes now, the reason why Maduro's still there, even though you have this other opposition leader who swore himself in, is because Maduro's got the loyalty of the military backed by Russia. Now, a militarized police force and a military that is uber nationalistic, meaning they will fight for their president on their home soil, which is illegal in this country. That's what they're facing there. That's what it looks like when that crap hits the fan. So please, please understand that the Mueller story has got to have a just ending. If we can't get justice, you don't get freedom. Freedom is completely reliant upon justice. Without justice, there is no America. Without a country of laws, there is no democracy. There's just petrodollars, shekels, there's pesos, and really. America is more than an idea. America is its institutions, and this president has tried to hobble them, to co-opt them. And he's been successful in the judicial branch. Not all of it, but a good chunk of it. And he's been successful up until now in Congress. Now, he lost half of what he gained, but he still has some control. This is dangerous. You cannot have a man who has no experience, is a failed businessman, is greedy, is a liar, and doesn't have any principles leading this nation. It's got to end. Buy a stinking podcast.